G'day world, Chris Hogan coming to you from Media Studio here at Burleigh Heads for episode 116 of Get Fact Up. And I have with me, my guest today is Cody McAuliffe. Cody and I met probably 5 months ago.
Yeah.
At a sick event in Brisbane.
Yeah.
And we just headed off straight away. And I've been watching your socials ever since. And I heard your name thrown around a bit. Actually, Mike Clark mentioned you as well. And I just wanted to get you on the show because I'm properly intrigued.
Yeah, amazing.
Thanks.
The marketing's working then. Thanks for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you. So, Cody, what do you do, mate? I could ask you what you're passionate about, but I think I need to know what you do.
Yeah, it's all interrelated anyway. So, what I do is I do mindset coaching for people. And I specialize in creating flow states. And the way that I do that is by testing people's epigenetics to understand how their brain works differently to other people, to create alignment between who they are biologically and what their soul's purpose is.
All right. Cool. Heaps of words in there that people aren't going to understand and very confusing. So let's talk about flow for a second.
Yeah.
What the hell's flow?
Flow is a heightened state of consciousness where you can basically get more done in less time. So the way that we define flow is by 3 things which it is not and 1 thing which it is. So when we think about flow, it's a state of selflessness. So that internal voice which narrates everything that we all have, it starts to disappear. It's also that state of timelessness where we start to have time speed up or slow down. It's outside the construct of time. It's a state of effortlessness. So when the effort becomes effortless, we're in flow. And then it becomes this state of richness. So they're the 3 boundaries of it, of what it is not, because it's individual to every single person. And then we have this state of richness where the purpose of the activity becomes the activity. Like when we think about a dance, it's not we're trying to get somewhere. We're experiencing every moment of the ebb and flow of the movement of what's actually going on. So the purpose of it becomes the purpose of it.
Yeah,
so that's how we define flow.
Another example from my mind, I guess, is, just when you're doing something and maybe you're writing, for argument's sake, writing a blog and the words are just flowing, for want of a better term, flowing onto the page, and lo and behold, you've got a blog that you've written in record time, and you have no idea where the time went, I guess.
100%, and that's an expression of personal flow. So we've got different levels of flow as well. We can be in flow with ourselves, where we're actually creating this expression of who we are through writing in that instance, through speaking, through presenting, all of these different areas where we can get into personal flow, but then we can actually start to tap into interpersonal flow or flow between people. So as we start to interact with people, we start to get into flow with them. When we're looking at that example of dancing, where if we're dancing with a partner, ballroom
dancer kind of thing,
but even as you interact with people, you can start to get into flow with them. You can start to connect. You can do that with your intimate partner. You can do that with a business partner. You can do that in a boardroom. When you can actually start to get into flow with people, then that's when the serious benefits start to come to fruition. So when we go from personal flow to interpersonal flow, we can then go into transpersonal flow, which is where we actually start to transcend what is our physical life. So it's actually what we're actually doing when we're creating a legacy. So what happens there is we've created something. It could be a book, which we were talking about before this. It could be a book which creates a life of its own, which then creates its own expression of its own flow of how that starts to impact the world. If we look at a book like How to Win Friends and Influence People, that book was written like almost 100 years ago, and it's still like a bestseller consistently. It has a life of its own, and that's what we're looking at when we're creating a legacy, and that becomes part of it. That's how we start to step through the different layers of what flow is.
Cool. So the process of learning flow or being coached through flow, where do you start?
So there's a specific process that you go through for that. You need to understand what your epigenetics actually are.
Okay, that's the big word you used before. What's epigenetics?
Epigenetics is just your current representation of your biology. So your fingernails, your eyes, all of these things are just based on your genes. So that's a representation of that, and your epigenetics is the current representation of that. When we know what your current expression of your genes is, then we can actually start to create alignment with that. Because if society says that you should get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, then everyone does that, and yet that's not optimal for some people based on their gene expression. Normally, people with longer digestive tracts would be more beneficial for them to sleep in, because between, say, 5 and 6 a.m. is a key point in your digestive cycle. So if they get up at that time, they instantly get into stress, and it slows them down for the rest of the day. About 2 or 3 o'clock, they crash the most.
So what's some signs for me where I'm waking up at 5?
Yeah.
Just boom, lights on, can't sleep any longer, just got to get up.
Yeah.
What's some signs that maybe other signs, maybe bodily functions or just things that I'm doing that it says that that's right for me?
Yeah. So like your skeleton's going to be a representation. So just put your hands here like this. Yeah. So it looks like your ring finger is a little bit longer than the pointer. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that just means that you've got more testosterone in your body. So that means you're more likely to be more of a morning person, because testosterone actually peaks in the morning, whereas human growth hormone on the other end of the spectrum then is more in the afternoon and slower to take into account. So what that means is you're more likely to be a morning person anyway, so you can actually get up and it doesn't affect you. Your digestive tract is a little bit shorter, so that means that you can actually digest things a lot faster. So you would be more likely be a morning person, and then that creates a certain rhythm that you can have throughout the day to get more done in less time when aligning with how your biology actually works.
So does epigenetics sort of dictate, you know, how many hours I should be sleeping, what kind of food I should be eating?
Yep. All of those things. So like what I consistently see is when I'm testing people's epigenetics, then there is always some healthy food which is actually detrimental to that person. For me, that's watermelon and bananas. So there's certain impacts on that, on my biology, that means it downregulates it. I have a couple of clients that have broccoli as their thing. It's like broccoli, chicken and broccoli, that's the best diet for you. Everyone thinks that that's a healthy thing. And yet for them, it actually creates chronic burnout because of certain representations of hypothyroidism that they have. It's a specific thing that comes up for them. And if they have cruciferous vegetables or broccoli, that instantly creates this downregulation of their entire system. So it's no longer about being these generalized recommendations. We can actually understand every individual person and every individual need that they actually have. And when we can actually create their life aligning with that, they can just instantly get into flow.
Okay. This is a different level.
Yeah.
All right. So is your title thrown around that maybe other people use to describe you, like a coach and is it a business coach, or is it what's the generic term that kind of describes you and what you do?
I think the most generic term would be like a life coach.
Oh, damn.
Yeah,
sorry you got bagged with that.
Yeah, I know. I resisted it for such a long period of time. I'm like, oh my God, I can't be a life coach. No, anything but that. And then, because then you also get the thing of like, what, are you like in your 30s? Like, what life experience do you have? And it's just, everything goes along with it. So it's very interesting, but I've started to lean into that more just because it creates an all-encompassing expression of like what life is for people.
Yeah.
And what we get to look at in that is what I'm really doing is I'm creating awareness around who the person is in front of me. So it's not even about my experience, it's about the science of that person. And basically once we understand what their epigenetic expression is, we basically have an encyclopedia of who they are more than they even know. So it just means that we understand all of the drivers that are actually driving every behavior. Because what actually happens is you can look at one behavior like exercise, and each person will have a different need being met just by doing that. So if we look at an example for you, it would be the expression of testosterone and adrenaline. Whereas for someone, if you think about Mike, it would be about digestion. He has a longer digestive tract, and digestion is more important for him. So he's better to be one of those people who are a night owl. So even if we just look at those two different things, we can see different expressions, different needs of the same behavior, which is why we look at like behavioral profiling doesn't really work that well, because you can change the behavior easily and skew tests. Whereas if you actually understand the biological driver behind it, you can actually understand why someone does that behavior, and then you can actually start to create them being in flow much more often, which is very much what I do as well. It's like I will coach people to be in flow themselves, but then I also create other people who can create their own movement of people in flow as well. So that's ultimately what my predominant mission is in this world. It's like to create other people, creating other people into flow.
Perfect. So that would be what, business leaders, or is it less of the CEO and the founder and the CEO of a business, for example, and more of the operations HR person, or like who is it in a business sense?
So it's going to be the CEO, the founder, or the team of managing directors, because those people are the people that are going to be able to impact others the most. And when they can start to get into flow themselves and allow everyone in their team to get into interpersonal flow, then the business just becomes easy. Then it becomes effortless itself. Then the business becomes the expression of what flow is for them. So it becomes this connection and this unfolding of each of those things.
Yeah.
So
and high performance teams.
Yeah.
That know each other's, I guess, epigenetics.
Yeah.
And can understand, right, well, you work best in this type of situation, so let's do this type of work at that time of day, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Right.
And you can actually look at like the underlying drivers and expressions of each of those things. So if we look at one of your core drivers would be freedom, whereas if you look at, again, Mike on a different part of the spectrum, it's safety and security. So if everything is filtered through that for him, it's completely different to you. So it's like, I need freedom in my life. I need to have this expression. I need to be seen and heard, whereas he's actually okay to like be by himself at certain points. So you would need that as well, but for a different reason. And it just means that you can actually start to understand the person in front of you and communicate with them based on how they listen rather than based on how you communicate. Because that's where most of the conflict comes in. It's like people communicate based on how they listen rather than how the other person listens, which then just creates this conflict in the workplace, and then productivity drops down. People have high staff turnover, all of these things, all of the problems are from conflict in the workplace, in families, all of these things. And when you understand how the other person listens and you can communicate based on that, the conflict just starts to disappear.
Unreal. I'm probably blown away, mate. Like, to be honest, I've been in business longer than I'd probably like to admit, and I've failed my way forward, like to here, stumbled over every rock I think there was on the road, and but one of the couple of those things that I have done that they have given me some benefit. Yeah. For example, not behavioral profiling, but personality profiling. Yeah. And I know you're going to love this because I've been doing disc profiling for a long time. I saw you say something really nice about it on social the other day.
So, am I allowed to swear on this podcast?
Yeah, mate.
Yeah, so basically disc profiling is a crock of shit because it's behavioral rather than biological. And the perfect expression of that was that you just said, I fail forward, which is how your brain works. It's like, I'm going to learn and I'm going to fail and I'm going to continue to do. Whereas if we look at the other end of the spectrum, I'm going to start to think about what I need to do. I'm going to have the plan mapped out, and then I start to take action. And even as a business owner or a business leader, if you actually understand that, then it just means that you start to create a team, which is the other end of the spectrum, so that they fulfill all the gaps that you don't have.
Yeah, exactly.
So someone like you is amazing at creating things and being the vision of the business, and you won't necessarily be the best person at finishing things.
Yeah, exactly. So Mike actually suggested reading Rocket Fuel the other day, and I need an integrator, basically.
Exactly.
So I'd heard this term before due to one of the other dynamics, what is it? The other profiling thing? Wealth Dynamics?
Wealth Dynamics, yep.
Yeah. So I think they use a similar sort of structure with, I guess, behavioral stuff.
Yeah, it's again behavioral.
Yeah. So tried to find that person multiple times, have had them sort of pass through my life, and things have been a lot better.
Yeah.
But yeah, now we're actually on the hunt for someone. So
that's exciting.
Yeah.
So what you're looking for there is someone who's going to be much more leaner in structure. So they're going to be like much more frail because they're actually driven by beta brainwave frequencies. So they have a high central nervous system stimulation, where they can actually just get more done and integrate everything, and they're just like a workhorse. So it's like a crusader, basically. They're just on a crusade to get things done. So if you actually understand that, then you can actually create people being that. And if you think about Mike, he's more of that person than you are. So someone like him would be your best business partner to actually create that, so that they could get the work done, and you'd be the person who's seen as the business. You'd be the image in front of all of the people, all of the speaking, all of the interviews in here like this. That would be the perfect expression of that. So it's looking for someone like that. And you can start to pick that up based on how people look, as well as even just the language that they use. So you can start to filter through resumes based on the language that they use to actually understand what their underlying psychology is, so that you can actually create that person.
Okay.
Because the natural tendency is most people hire people like them, which is the worst thing that you can do. Because then you've got a team of people who just clash because they're all the same.
Oh, you mean integrators hire integrators? Or
Yeah. So most people just hire people that are the same as them.
Same as them. I gotcha.
Because it's like, I connect with this person. It's so amazing. They just get it. Except the purpose of a team is to fulfill the gaps that you have.
Yeah.
So when we look at like a recruitment context, it's like we need to be able to find what the gaps are, and understanding that certain epigenetic expressions and certain people will fulfill a certain role. And if you know what that is, just based on like 30 seconds of meeting someone, it's just like, right, this person's going to be the perfect fit. It's going to align with what their biology actually is. They're going to be a great fit. Do they actually fit within our values then? So it just becomes this faster process to be able to fulfill the perfect person within that role.
Awesome. So, okay, I need to learn this stuff now, right? I need to become one of your boffins. What do I got to do?
So part of the process is basically just number one, testing epigenetics, which is just a 30-minute process. So the natural question is...
Close on or close off?
That's optional. Depends how deep you want to go.
Oh, baby.
Buy me a drink first, at least. So what happens is we basically map out people's skeleton, because your skeleton is a representation of your epigenetics. So things like your fingernails, like ratios between your body, all of these different things create the expression of what your genes currently are, and that changes over a period of time. So as you start to develop through different stages of life, it starts to change a little bit. So we test that to understand where you're at. Then we actually start to test what your stage of development is in terms of your thought process as well. Because there are certain people at certain stages of development in their thoughts as well, which then starts to hold them back. So we take this epigenetic expression as well as the development that person's done throughout the life. Once we have those two things, we instantly know exactly where that person is in that moment, and whether they're going to be a good fit for, in a recruitment context, we're looking for if they're a good fit for the company. You could technically do it if you're looking for a partner or any of these things, which is very interesting. And that just instantly gives you that starting point, and then you start to actually map out what that person wants to create in the world and the vision that they want to have, because every person ultimately has like a soul's mission, a life's purpose that they want to fulfill, that they're here to create in the world. And a lot of people, number one, don't know what that is or don't know how to do it. So once you actually understand your biology and you understand the factors that create who you are and what you're required to create based on the body that you actually have, then you can start to actually create that, being the experience and the living of what you're here to create. So when we have that data, then we can instantly start to map out what will be the expression of how you live your life in flow, rather than just having these momentary experiences of it.
Okay, so is this done in a one-on-one situation? Do you normally do it in a group situation? And
there's different levels of that. So there's people that I work with one-to-one, like Kate. Kate's one of my clients. Who we caught up with that day that when we first met. Kezia as well. Yep. So they're people that I work with on a one-to-one basis, but then a lot of the programs that I'll do is in a group situation. So also one of the other things as well is I teach other people how to do that. So there's a certification that I've created on how to actually start to do that throughout all the systems, so that people can actually be a coach like I coach people. So it's their own individual expression of that, but then they also learn all of the skills to be able to do that, because ultimately most people think that I'm just reading their mind, and the reality is it's just a process to actually understand how that person actually relates to the world, and you can start to have quite good educated guesses on what the thoughts they're actually having. So it becomes extremely powerful.
Yes. there's been a number of times already in this chat where you've said some things I've gone, how did you know that? Okay. Yeah. So you said groups, one-on-one, and I have to say, though, that my outside perception, sort of watching, it has looked a little bit woo-woo and cultish.
Yeah.
Do you get that a lot?
Yeah. So anything...
Why do you think that is?
Anything which is going against what the norm of society is considered a cult, because people are buying into something. Even key person of influence is a cult because it has a specific language around it. And it's just like, well, if we think about a culture, we have an Australian culture.
Yeah.
So there's a certain language that we use that isn't used anywhere else. As soon as you start to create your own language around the thing you create, you're creating a culture or a cult. So what happens in that is just understanding that if you actually want to create change in the world, you need to be able to create a culture around what you do. You need to create a specific language around what you do, because then it actually creates this community of what you do where people buy into what your vision actually is. Because that's all that we do in any country even.
True.
It's like in Australia, we have a certain language. In America, they have a certain language. And we actually buy into what that is, and we come together because we have similar values, similar beliefs that are connected into people like that. Like in America, it's all about like a lot of people that moved to America are like, all right, well, I need to go in for a challenge. I need to go across the ocean and change my entire life. So that development of the generations means that people are more likely to take risks in America. Whereas if we have a colonial country here where people have been convicts, then it means that more likely we're going to have a drinking culture, because people are going to want to numb certain things. They're going to be more likely to break the law. They're more likely to have an experience of tall poppy syndrome based on all of these factors, based on all of the generational factors of how that culture was actually created and how it's actually unfolding. It's why we have tall poppy syndrome.
Wait, okay, that's an interesting segue. Tall poppy syndrome. I think I'm seeing a big shift, it disappearing from our culture. Here in Australia, and especially with the millennials coming through, where they're celebrating people driving Ferraris, they're celebrating people owning, big houses and being these big personalities. It's being celebrated now, and that's definitely an American influence. Which is just taken over the Australian culture a little bit, and at least from what I'm seeing. Are you seeing a similar thing, or are you still seeing tall poppy syndrome, outweighing tall poppy syndrome acceptance?
So it's just a generational thing. So when we look at millennials, because they're more of a global culture, they don't see it so much. Whereas if you think about Gen Y or even baby boomers, it's massive with them because that's the culture that they experience throughout their entire life. So over a period of time, it slowly fades out based on the different generations.
Do you think it'll come back?
I have no idea, because I have no idea where society's going. I have my ideas around what that is.
Well,
it probably will at some stage, because we go through certain cycles
all the time.
So it will probably come out when millennials start to mature and age, and then it will probably come through a cycle back through in 1 or 2 or 3 more generations anyway. So it will change as well based on the country. So the reason why it comes up is because the development of our country, the development of our culture created the system where that actually shows up.
Very cool. So cult. It's no longer a bad word by the sounds of it. It's actually, well, you've taught me that, of course, it's joined with culture, and I know that creating a company culture is based on values and purpose and aligns everybody, and that is actually strategy. Like, that is marketing strategy as well.
And that's what we call business flow.
Yeah.
The culture of a business is the business flow. So when we actually start to map out what the culture is and the energetic frequency of our business, then it starts to expand out. We start to allow that to actually being its self-fulfilling purpose. It becomes this perpetuating system when the business is in flow, which is what we call the culture of it. It's just another term for it. When we actually look at the flow of anything, we can start to look at what it is and start to basically consciously start to create it.
Yeah.
So,
Excellent. All right. Extracurricular activities. You're a ninja.
I am.
I love a fellow ninja, but different different camps.
Yeah.
So, mate, I've probably been fascinated with the whole Ninja Warrior
Yep.
show and watch it and just go, oh, I want to do that.
Yeah.
And then go and hang off a bar for a minute.
Yeah.
And go, wow, hands are sore.
Yeah.
And I've been watching you do, flipping around. It's just in the ring, is that right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mate, what got you into that? And did it take a long time before you were able to hold on for as long as you can?
So I've only been doing it for about a year.
Yep.
So basically the reason why I got into it is I saw the show and I was kind of seeing a girl that was on the show. So I'm like, I might get into that, and I just started like just over a year ago and I was exactly the same. Like I'd done gym most of my life, but like deadlifting is completely different to hanging from a bar for a long period of time. Like you have grip strength, but this is like grip endurance. So like I started a similar kind of brain to yours, which just means that I will learn by failing. So I just turned up and just went through and started to build up my grip endurance. And then that just went from there. And the reason why it's exciting for you is because of that adrenaline, the risk of it, which is why I love business as well. It's that need that needs to be fulfilled for you of that variety, that challenge, that risk that like lights you up, which is why you see it and you're like, oh, that'd be so awesome. And then when you decide to actually go along to it, it just becomes the unfolding of that. And the reason why I like it so much is because it's always challenging. You can always just change one thing and it changes the entire dynamic of it because it's such a dynamic thing. Whereas like the gym, it's like the variables are the weight, the exercise, these different things. It's stimulating for a few years until you like reach the peak of that. Like
I was never a gym guy, never.
Yeah.
And I started Zoo 18 months ago.
Yeah.
And that has been awesome. It was a proper challenge.
Yeah.
And I do it every morning at home and try to get to the gym a couple of times a week. But it's absolutely fantastic. So I'm dead keen, and it's funny you saying this sort of stuff because it's actually refreshing hearing somebody say something about you where you can agree.
Yeah.
Whereas too many times I think people try to tell you about yourself or tell you stuff that it doesn't quite gel.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. Yesterday, I was trying to think of the name of the book that I'm writing.
Yeah.
And I still haven't nailed the title.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I've just had to move on, forget it. But the things that I wrote down all these crazy ideas and people were like, yeah, that one, I really love that one. It's hilarious. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't like it. I wrote it down, but I don't like it. So similar type of thing. And the other thing that I guess I think's really funny, and I think you're very brave to do, and I was almost going to come out and do the absolute opposite, maybe the Celeste Barber version of you with the model shots and budgie smugglers, and mate, I mean, clearly you got a good bod. And did you do modeling? Is that where that came from, or was that just a?
No, so I used to be like a champion bodybuilder.
Oh,
and
right.
Yeah. So I was the national champion in 2015. So like I've got a background in it. I have a background in the fitness industry as well. So like I'm on the board for Sports Nutrition Australia, all of these things where I've still got connections in all of those industries.
Yep.
And the funny thing is when you have like an awesome body and an awesome six pack, people just want to take photos of you. So I've been in calendars and things like that, but I've never like gone out and pursued modeling or anything like that.
Yeah. So why are you posting those things now?
Because it's polarizing.
Yeah. You just
marketing. Yeah.
You just like to tweak people's brains.
Yeah.
So you're like, why are you doing that?
Yeah. So what it does is it instantly creates intrigue.
Yeah.
And it's ultimately who I am. And when I start to have the full expression of who I am, that starts to attract people who resonate with me. And it also polarizes the people who aren't my people. So what it instantly does is it instantly creates an unconscious trigger in someone's mind of whether they resonate with that or not, or whether they're triggered by it. Because most people are just like, oh, that guy's arrogant, that guy's whatever. And if you look at the content, it's normally completely not even related to me having my abs out.
Yeah.
So it's it's creating this intrigue for people, which is what I'm all about. It's creating intrigue so that people like start to learn more and more and more, because they're just like, oh, I just don't get it. Like, even you asking this question is a perfect example of how it actually works.
Yeah.
It creates this intrigue in what you do. Even at the start of this, it's like, what do you actually do? It creates this intrigue, and people want to know these things because they're just like, I don't understand this and I want to understand. So it creates this this rabbit hole of just finding out more and finding out more and finding out more and finding out more.
Yeah.
So,
all right, stand by for the Celeste Barber version of Cody McAuliffe's model shots. And if you don't know who Celeste Barber is, then she's actually from Tweed Heads.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, there you go.
my wife went to school with her sister.
Yeah.
So, funnily enough. There was another question where we were going there. Oh, so we were talking about tall poppy syndrome. We're talking about, I think I've seen this change in the way people like to talk online. They seemed very... I asked for some encouragement on writing this book. Yeah. And I got it.
Yeah.
And I don't normally ask for that type of encouragement. Yeah. And I'm properly humbled by the amount of encouragement I got, and especially some of the people that actually encouraged me. I was like, I don't know you that well, so why are you encouraging me? Or, wow, you're a blast from the past. Where did you come from? So some people would call that attention seeking from my point of view. But when I see people doing those types of posts to other, you're awesome, go get them, wow, you're on fire, which I see a lot of on your posts. Yeah, it's described as sycophantish behavior. So is that a negative term? You're a sycophant. Because it could also mean that you're also a narcissist. Yeah. So where are we at with that in your experience?
So it's so interesting to see the mainstreaming of everyone being a narcissist, because we live in a social media society that if you start to put things out there, it just becomes the unfolding of like what tall poppy is in that. It becomes expressed through, oh, you're just a narcissist. It's all about you. And you see that a lot more like in the fitness industry. It's like, oh, well, I'm promoting my business, but you're seen as a narcissist by it being all about you. It's all about me. It's all about me. It's all about me. And yet that inherently creates branding and awareness around what their vision is, what their mission actually is. So when we look at that, we look at two components. Two components is like, number one, you need to be able to communicate who you are, what you do, and do your branding. And at the same time, know that every single person is going to either be for you or against you. Yeah. And what you get to do in that instance is start to consistently put out that content regardless, to try and find all the people that are for you, and you're also going to get the people that are against you. So when we think about how we're creating that content, we're thinking about there's 40% of people who are going to basically love you based on what you do. There's 40% of people who are a little bit that they might love you based on what you do. There's 20% of people who are going to hate you regardless of what you do, and 20% of people who are going to love you regardless of what you do. So when we're starting to do this, it's starting to take a step back and really create awareness around who we're trying to talk to. Because if we're trying to talk to and please this 20% of people based on what's actually going on internally for them, based on their own shit that's actually coming up, then we're just going to lose, and we're not actually going to communicate our message. So the more that you start to step out, the more that you start to actually communicate what is actually your message and what you're here to create, the more people are going to stand up with you and against you. And when you actually start to willingly step into that, that becomes you stepping into your leadership.
Which
doing
is
that consistently.
Which is that term leaning in, which is also a relatively new term in most people's vocab. So today we've learned about flow, epigenetics, leaning in. The other one is conscious entrepreneurs. Yeah. What are conscious entrepreneurs?
Conscious entrepreneurs are people who are filtering all of their decisions through a certain lens, and that lens is being conscious of the actual impact on the world that they actually have. So when we think about in the 80s, 90s, it was very much around what the bottom line of the business at all costs. Now it's like, what's the impact of our company?
Mm-hmm.
What's the impact on the environment of our company? All of these things just means that we're actually conscious of the fact that we actually create our reality with everything that we do. So we actually start to consciously create that and filter through that, because we actually understand, holy shit, we just might be destroying the world. What if we didn't have to do that?
Yeah. We're unconsciously incompetent.
Yeah. 100%.
Beautiful. Cody, mate, it's been a fantastic chat. We could go on all day. How do people, I guess, interact with you best? Is that social media? Is that come to one of your workshops? Where are you conducting these workshops? Can you answer all of those questions?
Best way to get in contact with me is on Instagram or Facebook. My handle is at the Cody McAuliffe, so that's at TheCodyMcAulifffe. So that's at TheCodyMcAuliffe.
Don't say it again.
Yeah, come on, people. You got to learn this.
Right.
People don't write it down the first time. You got to say it twice.
That's what the rewind button is for. And so that's the same across Insta, Facebook, and what about LinkedIn? I see you there.
Yeah.
You're definitely more prevalent on Facebook.
Yeah. Goes Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram for me. They're my top platforms.
Yeah.
So generally, a lot of the people that I work with are more hanging out on Facebook and LinkedIn, whereas Instagram's just more my random living.
Sure. and have you got a book also?
Yeah, so I've rewritten it, so it's up to 38,000 words. So looking at sending it off to the editor in about 2 weeks.
Woohoo! Awesome. I'll be super keen to read that.
Yeah.
Has it changed its title or anything like that? Or are you undecided as well?
Yeah, so it went through a lot of changes. It's currently called The Flow Formula, How to Unlock Your Superhuman Potential.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Looking forward to that one. Oh, thanks so much, Cody. I really appreciate you coming on the show. We have so many fantastic people on the show, and you can tell there's really no structure. It's just go with the flow.
Yeah, perfect. That's why I like it.
So thanks for watching, guys. All the shows are available on memedia.com.au, and we have a present for you this Christmas 2019 where we will actually be putting them all out on Apple Podcasts, and so that you can listen to them while you're mowing the lawn over the holidays. Beautiful.
Perfect.
Thanks again, mate.
Thanks for taking the time to interview me and give me the opportunity to be able to share with your audience. It's an honor. Thank you.
Appreciate it, man. Ciao.